I knew Arthur Candib for over 20 years as a very articulate man of very definite opinions who shared them freely. Arthur had an acerbic, dry wit, a strong sense of irony that bordered on cynical but was never mean. Above all, he was a serious man. He had a seriousness about him. Life was a serious business. Education and the success of his students was a serious business. Ethics and social justice was a serious business. And he was equally serious about food and his creature comforts. What I didn't fully appreciate about Arthur until I actually sat with the entire family together was how underneath this prickly, ornery exterior that he cultivated for the outside world, there was a very tender and loving man whose real major preoccupation in life was family and friends. This stemmed from his own family of origin. Arthur was the youngest of 3 children, 9 years younger than his older brother Harry and considerably younger than his eldest sister Katie. Arthur was a devoted son to his parents Philip and Fanny, who were respectively a butcher and a homemaker, from whom he learned a strong sense of ethics, and that begins with feeding people. During the Depression, Arthur saw many people go hungry, and many of those people ended up at the Candib's home. The last picture we have of Arthur was on his last good day. It was on Rosh Hashanah, and Arthur is in this picture slicing smoked meat. Arthur's serious attitude towards life might have derived from his many brushes with death. As an infant, Arthur was hospitalized with spinal meningitis, and the doctors told his mother to go home. There was nothing more they could do. He was going to die. But his mother, Fanny Candib, stayed and took care of him. And despite the doctor's dire predictions, Arthur lived. 12 years ago, when Arthur first contracted cancer, he was again told he had at most a year to live, but he was nursed and loved and fed and cared for, and Arthur proved the doctors wrong. He liked to prove people wrong. Arthur's loss of his first wife, Sheila, to cancer, and 5 years later his daughter, Catherine Joy, also to cancer, was another episode in Arthur's life which left its mark on the serious business of living. Arthur accepted his lot with his typical stoic, pragmatic nature, but he never got over the loss of his daughter. That was one of the few times Arthur permitted others to see him cry. Nevertheless, Arthur was blessed with 2 other wonderful children, Dorothy and Stephen, who encouraged him to bring Razel into their life and create a new family with yet another daughter, Catherine Eve, who became the apple of his eye. As we sat and spoke about Arthur last night, there was a lot of laughter through all the tears of loss and love. This was a family that was united in their embrace of Arthur's quirky, prickly character. But most of all, this was a family united in love, a family that could sit and talk together, be comfortable together. Arthur's first lasting impression that he left on Roseanne, she told me, was Sunday afternoon baths. More than one on a Sunday afternoon. Arthur made a career out of retirement. he took that seriously too. He devoted his energy to getting up at the crack of noon, enjoying leisurely teas, more time for stories, and he was a raconteur. If you had the patience to get to the end of the stories, there was a connection. He knew how to relax, how to enjoy life's creature comforts in simple, small ways. His stories meandered, and as his grandson Philip so beautifully put it, they had a fractile quality to them. Arthur's seriousness of life was mostly centered around his career as an educator. As an educator, he was a father figure, and as a father, he was an educator. Arthur was a great believer in education and his students, and promoter of equality for women. He gave kids ideas, radical ideas. He encouraged education in whatever you were good at. He got students whose parents were illiterate to go to Harvard and Yale. He saved many kids and had many major successes. He had only 2 failures, he told me, the 2 who became rabbis. Arthur had little patience for religion and religious ritual and theology, although he had a good relationship with me, and he often told me so, and how he respected me. And nevertheless, at our last meeting last week, Arthur told me with a sense of urgency that he had to convert me. Why should such a smart man waste his time on religion? For Arthur, the only true religion was the religion of love. His religion was comprised of basic wisdom, seichel, such as letting people know about toilet paper specials. His seichel was grounded in human contacts, in showing interest in people. He judged the way you behaved with others. That's what really mattered. That's what constituted his religion. Arthur was a proud Jew, a strong supporter of Israel, a combator of anti-Semitism. He was a lover of his people, but not indiscriminately. Arthur's religion was intellectual honesty and an intolerance for hypocrisy. But with his children and grandchildren, of whom he was so proud, Arthur had unconditional love. I want to share with you a reading that Razel pointed out to me last night. It's a reading from our Machzor that in some ways sums up Arthur's relationship with all his children and grandchildren. Give your children unconditional love, a love that is not dependent on report cards, clean hands, or popularity. Give your children a sense of wholehearted acceptance of their human frailties as well as their abilities and virtues. Give your children your permission to grow up, to make their own lives independent of you. Give them a strong sense of truth. Bestow upon your child the blessings of your values. These are the laws of honoring your son and your daughter, as children are commanded to honor parents. It was written by Rabbi, Joshua Loth Liebman. Arthur will be missed for his honesty, for his thoughtfulness, and his idiosyncratic mannerisms. His gentleness and sweetness, though he didn't want to be seen that way. His generosity of spirit and menschlichkeit, and his very large presence. I could go on, but I promised Arthur I would keep it short, since he really told me that he didn't see the necessity or the point of a ritual such as this. In short, Arthur Candib was a gute neshama, a mensch, and he will be deeply missed and long remembered. Yehi zichrono levracha. May his memory always be for a blessing.
Thank you, Rabbi. You got it right. Thank you so much, Ron.